Bakr and Rasulullah from Makkah to Medina, which is referred as migration from Dar al-Shirk to Dar al-Islam, because this is what the statement of Ali radiallahu anhu was. And we'll talk about a little bit briefly when we will discuss the life of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. But this was a statement made when they were looking for making a calendar for the Muslims. And that was the significance of that migration. So today we'll talk about briefly in one talk main events of the life of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in Medina. After he migrated from Makkah to Medina, and now from the Medina life in general, you can understand that 10 years of life to discuss in one lecture. It doesn't do any justice, but that's how it is, inshallah. So last week we talked about briefly about Isra al-Mi'raj, migration to Medina, and during the migration there were plots to assassinate Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we talked about the roles of various Sahaba, specifically the family of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and the people who were around Abu Bakr who played a critical role in the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from Makkah to Medina. And that's just in a summary, I guess. Now today we'll talk about when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and the Sahaba in general, when they arrived in Medina, many of them fell sick. So we'll talk about a little bit about that, and the building of society in Medina, and what kind of personality Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had in general as Islamic personality, and also on the battlefield. The main events that I will kind of a bit talk about will be the Sulh Hudaybiyah, which is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah that happened while in the Medina era, and then the conquest of well, actually we'll not talk about conquest of Mecca, we'll just skip that also. I'm not talking about the battles in general, but we'll talk about the last Hajj that was performed in while Abu Bakr was in charge of that Hajj. Okay. As far as the Medina life goes, when they arrived, specifically the hadith talk about Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, Abu Bakr Siddiq, Bilal Habashi, and the third one was Amr ibn Fuhaira. These two were the freed slave of Abu Bakr and Abu Bakr himself. They fell sick, and many other Sahaba as well. And there are poetry actually said by Bilal Habashi as well, and that talks about the pain that they were going through when they arrived in Medina. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he made the dua for the Sahaba who were feeling sick, homesick, and physically sick as well, there was a specific kind of a fever that people used to get because of the climate that the Medina had. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the dua about the love of the Sahaba and in general for the people towards the Medina. And Rasulullah said, Allahumma habib ilayna al-Madinata kama habbabta Makkah, aw ashadda. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the people love the Medina as they love Makkah even more. And subhanAllah, this is the brothers and sisters who have been to the Hijaz, and when they go to Makkah and Medina, they can feel it. That the kind of a love that they feel towards Medina more than towards Makkah. And the way the people of Medina treat even the visitors and outsiders who come, and we find the very similar things when the way they welcome the people, the Muhajirin from Makkah and Medina as well. And we see that this is a dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that made this love, the connection until today. Even though a person will be going from any part of the world and visiting Makkah and Medina, thinking of Makkah as the Haram, the direction that we pray and all those things. But there is a connection with the Medina, and many of the fuqaha they say that this is because of the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about the Medina. Okay, so this is one of the things. Then when the Sahaba and Rasulullah migrated to Medina, one of the things that was on the first step he was building the society of the Medina on the pillars of Islam, the foundation of Islam. And Islam, now Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he was there, he was a messenger of Allah, of course, for first mosque. And then, of course, he was the ruler as well now. It's no more Rasulullah was under others' rules like he was in Mecca. Hence, now he had to make different kinds of decisions. Meaning now, there were people who were non-Muslims still among the Medina. That included the Jews, that included the Mushrikeen, that included even the Munafiqeen, the hypocrites as well, right? The polytheists, the hypocrites, and the Jews, and of course the Muslims. And the Muslims had two core groups, Al-Ansar and Al-Muhajirun. The Ansar were the people of the Medina who supported the new people who were arriving into Medina because of Islam. Now, when Rasulullah and Sahaba arrived there, the very first thing that they did was they built a masjid. And that masjid, as we see that, we don't see Rasulullah in the first 13 years he built any masjid. But the moment he arrived in Medina, the first action he did was build a masjid. And because the masjid plays a pivotal role in Islamic society. Because and this masjid was not per se a place for just 5 daily prayers. Many of the masajid, unfortunately, because of the situation in different parts of the world, is you find the masjid is locked up after the salah time is over. When sometimes it happens, you are traveling and you look for a masjid, even here, right? You're traveling, you look for a masjid, and you look at put in a GPS, you go to the masjid, it's not necessarily the exact time of the prayer, so meaning the jama'ah, and you'll find the masjid is closed. And I can personally tell you, many a time, I have been to the masjid and I prayed outside the masjid because the masjid was locked down. Now, the masjid was more than that. In the time of Rasulullah and following years, this masjid was, if you say it would not be wrong, like a headquarters for Rasulullah. He was doing all sorts of businesses from the masjid. None of that business means making money. It was more of it was a place Rasulullah was making judgments between the people. There were different kinds of disputes, no matter the social kind of dispute or whatever kind of dispute, and he was making those judgments among them. And then the very same place was used for sending even armies to defend and protect the inhabitants of the Medina at that time. And also, if the place was for worship, for learning, there were people who were always present, which was Ashab Sufa outside the masjid. These were the poor, destitute people who did not really have any place to go, and they were poor people. They were living based on living off of the charity or from the treasury, whatever small amount of wealth was in the treasury at that time, or the Baitul Mal. They were living off of that. They were poor and needy people, but in reality they were there because they were very keen about learning from Rasulullah. They did not want to miss a chance to learn from Rasulullah. So that kind of it almost sounds as if it's like a madrasa or a university was there. That they were continuously learning from Rasulullah, the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the masjid was there for all the people at that time, men and women both. That's another dilemma that we have. There are masajid where women are not even welcome. Masjid is a place for both men and women. And I understand the whole issue regarding as perspective of the salah of a woman, where it is more preferable and all those things. That's all well and good. But there were Sahabiyat who were coming to the masjid, and there were specific rules for that. Even like, for example, the salah is over, women will leave first. So there's no issue of forceful mixing and this kind of stuff. This is just a side thing because that's another thing I have been through. Even with my own wife, was in Pakistan, and in Pakistan is very different than here. Okay, so the time for the salah is running out, and we cannot enter into the masjid. The masjid is, I could enter the masjid. I can pray. My wife cannot enter. Okay, because they do not allow the women to get into the masjid. And for them, it's better that my wife prays on the street because the time for salah is running out. We have to pray, no matter what. So that was preferable for the people that she would pray outside on the street and that's, I believe this is part of the ignorance about the rules in Islam, rather than it is because of Islam. Yeah, it's the ignorance of Islam rather than anything else. But it's something that we have to think about. We have to make sure that these things do not happen, and these things are taken care of. Anyways, so masjid was a pivotal played a pivotal role for building a society because people would come and live around the masjid, closer to gain the knowledge of that. Now, but that happened when Rasulullah had the power. Hence, the masjid became a place to really get the knowledge, not trim down knowledge or knowledge that is, okay, we talk about this subject, but don't talk about this subject. We are living in this part of the world, so we don't talk about these, that Islam, but not Islam. So, masjid was not never like that. Masjid was the place where you learn from about Islam. Islam as a whole, without any kind of trimming down the message or anything like that, right? And that can only happen when you have the power and authority. Then you will have a masjid where you will not be fearful of these kinds of things as well. Right? Okay. Now, when it comes to the life of Abu Bakr, this hadith I always remember whenever I think of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. His personality was subhanallah. One time Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he asked a question. The hadith is reported by Sahih Muslim, by Imam Muslim rahimahullah. And he said, the source from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, قال قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من أصبح منكم اليوم صائما. He asked, who woke up fasting today? Abu Bakr said, أنا. Then Rasulullah said, فَمَنْ تَبِعْ مِنْكُمُ الْيَوْمَ جَنَازَةً. Who followed a janazah today, the procession? By the way, Abu Bakr said, I did. Abu Bakr, قال أبو بكر أنا. قال فَمَنْ أَطْعَمَ مِنْكُمُ الْيَوْمَ مِسْكِينًا. And who has fed a miskeen needy today? Abu Bakr said, I did. Then Rasulullah said, فَمَنْ عَادَ مِنْكُمُ الْيَوْمَ مَرِيضًا. Then, and who has visited for iyadah of a sick person? Abu Bakr said, he did. And subhanAllah, look at this. This is an interesting story that every action Rasulullah is asking about, Abu Bakr is the one right away saying, he did. And then Rasulullah said, مَا اجْتَمَعْنَا فِي أَمْرٍ إِلَّا دَخَلَ الْجَنَّةِ. Whoever have all these actions combined together, he's the one who's the person of the Jannah. And that's what Abu Bakr Siddiq was. And that's what we are talking about as him, one of the 10 who was given the glad tidings of the Jannah. The point here is, as one of the reports you talk about, these questions were asked in the morning time. After Fajr time, these questions were asked from Abu Bakr Siddiq, and he has done all those things while going towards Fajr prayer. And he saw Rasulullah over there. And this is amazing for a person like Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr, if you see, Umar al-Khattab, I did not mention the story, I forgot. But Umar al-Khattab, he always tried to, pass Abu Bakr in the good deeds. Like he was competing with Abu Bakr Siddiq. And one time, at the time of Tabuk, Umar was very energized that today I am going to beat Abu Bakr Siddiq. He went there with half of the belongings to give donation from his house. He goes there, and then Rasulullah asked about others. Abu Bakr came with all the belongings from his house, subhanAllah. And Rasulullah said, did you leave anything for your family? And his response was, Allah and His Messenger's name. And Umar's response from there on was, man, this is not possible to beat Abu Bakr Siddiq. It's like this, and you will find sometime, I'm not comparing anybody with Abu Bakr, but you find around yourself sometimes people, that you feel like you want to compete and you want to beat them in goodness or something, or even sometimes coursework. And that guy or the girl they're not even competing with nobody. They're just doing the normal things. And they're way ahead of everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that guy is strolling on the street, you're running and you're still behind. So something like that you feel like. And I know people like this. That you try to compete with them and you feel like, man, come on. No matter what you do, you can't beat them. And subhanAllah has given them, blessed them with capabilities, capacity that they are able to do those things. And you find the barakah in their time as well. The amount of things they are able to achieve in the very same time all of us have. Look, everybody has the same 24 hours a day. It's not that somebody has a bigger 24 hours than us, or somebody has a 36 hours a day and we have 24 hours. What we find is the people who organize their life in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they start finding time, and they find people around them who start helping them as well to achieve the thing that they're trying to achieve. And that's what we find in Abu Bakr Siddiq's life. So as you see, that it's not only that he was able to do all that. Look at his family, the kind of family he had. Whether his children, whether his parents, whether his wife, whosoever we look at them. SubhanAllah, they're like 4 generations from the Sahaba. That this is what Abu Bakr Siddiq, this is why I put this as he was an exemplary, comprehensive Islamic personality. If you want to look at it, Abu Bakr is one of them. Of course, for us, the best example to follow is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No doubt about that. We're talking about the Sahaba. It's one of the best examples that you can find, and you will find like comprehensively anything that you want to look for, you find in his life. Whether you're talking about the ibadat, the way he was doing, the way he was his dealing with the people, and also when it comes to even when he's in the battlefield, when he's a ruler, whatsoever he was at, you find him doing one of the best ways of doing the actions. When it comes to the battlefield, Abu Bakr Siddiq in Makkah and Medina, another different thing that happened was now the Muslims were engaged in various battles as well. And Rasulullah himself participated and led 27 battles in the Medina era, which is 10 years. Huh? Oh, sorry. Okay, so Rasulullah himself, he led 27 ghazawat, he led those battles, and there were about, the reports talk about was 50 or so, 50 plus saraya, or the battles that Rasulullah sent different Sahaba to lead those battles. So you can imagine that 10 years period of time, altogether close to about 80 battles that happened. So it's almost 8 per year average that happened. Now, okay. One thing that, and Abu Bakr Siddiq from the first major, he participated in all the major battles. Whether it's Battle of Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Tabuk, whichever battle we look at it, Abu Bakr Siddiq was present. Now, you will find sometime the dates are not 100% accurate. Okay? The reason I'm talking about this is because I just remember there was a question raised last week. I want to just put it here somehow. That sometimes you'll find the dates of exact date of when did a certain battle happen, or a certain event happen. So last week I talked about the Isra and Mi'raj, and I mentioned that 27th of Rajab as the date. Now there is no way authentic ahadith specifically. They're saying 27th of the Rajab is the time that the Isra and Mi'raj happened. These are all estimated times or report based on certain reports here and there that say, okay, there are certain events are happening around this time, so hence it is this year or this date. And as a matter of fact, 27th of Rajab when we talk about even as the day of night of Al-Isra and Mi'raj, we're not saying it's giving any other significance besides this, as many people think of it as if the fasting for that day is you get more hasanat or something, or do certain kind of ibadat. There is no ahadith or something, and this is not what we discussed. We were more discussing the aspect of Al-Isra and Mi'raj and the importance of Al-Isra and Mi'raj as a significant event that happened in the life of Rasulullah and significance for us as well. But not per se the day. And I want to be clear about that. Don't take it as when I say 27th of Rajab, so I'm saying this is it, it's written on the stone. There's a hadith that says it happened on 27th of Rajab. There's no such thing like that. So this is just, as remember, the scholar said there's weak hadith that say it, but weak hadith, of course, I'm not the one who can be taken for that. But this does not change anything. These dates and the years do not change much. Okay, now, when he talks about another aspect of Abu Bakr's life is, and in the Medina especially, when Rasulullah migrated from Makkah to Medina, he played a very significant role along with Umar ibn Khattab as an assistant to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, like the hadith of Rasulullah says, "Ma min nabiyyi illa lahu waziran," that there is no prophet except that he has two wazir or two assistants. Now, I especially make sure that I'm translating wazir word as assistants. Okay, many a times you see that wazir is translated as minister. Okay, minister has a different meaning. And obviously, we're not talking about there was no ministry in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now today, as we have, those ministers per se have a specific portfolio and they're doing a specific kind of a task that we know. Here, the job of wazir or Abu Bakr and Umar they were assistants to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were mu'awin, to be very another word to use. Okay, and here Rasulullah also said that ما من نبي إلا له وزيران من أهل السماء ووزيران من أهل الأرض. That they would have two wazir on the earth and two heavens and two on the earth. And so فأما وزيرائي من أهل السماء فجبريل وميكائيل. That for me the two wazir on the heavens or like our Jibreel and Mikael. وأما وزيرائي من أهل الأرض فأبو بكر وعمر. And on the earth, the two wazir that Allah Azza wa Jal provided Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were Umar and Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhum. Now, this is a great status. Look at that. Talking about two wazir on the heaven and two on the earth. And Abu Bakr and Umar were the ones on the earth. So that's the status of Abu Bakr Siddiq as the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Now, another major event that happened in the Medina life was the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Now, in the month of Dhul Qa'dah, which is the 6th year after the Hijrah, Messenger of Allah, he set out for about, again, this number 1400 is also not written on stone or something. You find different hadith. Some of them say 1400, some of them say 1700, some of them say 1600. So there's a variation. But majority of them talk about 1400. Okay? So around 1400 companion Sahaba visited to the sacred mosque in Mecca, meaning the Haram, to perform the Umrah. Now, when they were trying to do the Umrah, or they were reaching towards the Mecca, of course, the situation between the Meccans and the Muslims was not good. Many battles already had happened, Zawad and Saraya, and the big losses happened to the Meccans. There was a battle in the Muslims also had big losses, which was in the Battle of Uhud. Uhud was 70 plus Sahaba were martyred. Now, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Rasulullah through a dream, which is the wahi part of the wahi for the messengers, he took the Sahaba to perform the Umrah. Meccans did not want them to perform the Umrah. And the story is very long, and we will go into many details of the seerah of Rasulullah if we go into this. Because we're talking about more about Umar Abu Bakr's life, so I'm going to cut it short just to have an idea. So they were trying to prevent it, and then a point came that Meccans agreed to make a treaty with Rasulullah. Now, making a treaty, and which happened at a place called Hudaybiyah, hence it's called Treaty of Hudaybiyah or Sulh Hudaybiyah. Now, this treaty had significant impact. And we'll talk about that. But while they were doing this, so Abu Bakr had an incident in that event when they were sending different people first, and Urwa bin Mas'ud, who was not a Muslim at that time, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was talking. But one of the things that happened was he saw that Rasulullah was surrounded with people from different tribes. It's not, and for them, this is a very, very strange thing, because in this tribal society, people used to fight with each other just based on tribalism for a long, long period of time. And to see people who are from all sorts of walks of life around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made a statement to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, Muhammad, would you feel any struggle in what's the word? Extirpating? I don't know what extirpating means. What does it mean? Let me see the Arabic. Okay. اتصلت أمر قومك هل سمعت بأحد من العرب بل اجتاح أهله قبلك وإن تكن الأخرى وإن والله لا أرى وجوهك. But basically, what he's trying to say is that I see people around you that they will not be with you if something bad happens to you. Okay? And upon that, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he said something, and this is hadith is reported in Bukhari, and in general, he said, Unsus Badr Allah. In Arabic, it's a very bad word, to the way it is said. It's talking about Allah was the female god that they had. And Unsus basically means, in English, what's the word for that now? Huh? No, Unsus. Anyways, so it's a bad word about saying to the go and do something to the female genital of the female. Now this is Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. This is the word in the Bukhari mentioned, and I'm not trying to make up something from myself own or something. Look, Abu Bakr said this in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is why I'm saying that, repeating those words, because Abu Bakr said this, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of him, and Rasulullah did not stop him. Okay, so it was allowed in that circumstances for Abu Bakr to say this is what means by hadith taqreeri, meaning there's a hadith action happened for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did not prevent them to do an action. Okay, and then he said, who's this person? Urwa bin Mas'ud, who's this person? So they said, قال أبو بكر قال أما والذي نفسي بيدي لولا يد كانت لك عندي لما أجزيك بها لأجبتك. He said, if I did not have any favor which you did to me, which I did not compensate, I would retort to you. This is he would have answered back to him the words that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was using. Now, Abu Bakr was very firm when it comes to defending Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look, even though the circumstances were not really seemed like very much in favor of the Muslims in the time of the Hudaybiyah at that time. There was a time they thought Uthman bin Affan was actually martyred. And Rasulullah even took the Bay'at Ridwan, that they were going to fight the Meccans if they have killed Uthman bin Affan. But that was a false news, and it was a rumor, and Uthman was fine and he came back. And then they sent actually Suhail bin Amr, radiallahu anhu. He was also not a Muslim, and he was sent by the Quraysh as a delegation to come and make a treaty with the Muslims. Okay? And the words of the treaty seemingly looked like as if they were not in the favor of the Muslims. Okay? And these were the articles of the treaty, that the Muslims shall return this time and come back next year. So they will not do the Umrah now, they will do the Umrah next year. Remember that, Rasulullah saw the dream that they are going for Umrah. Hence they were there at the Hudaybiyah. So now they were saying, oh, you cannot do the Umrah, now you go there and come back next year. And then they shall not come back armed, but can bring with them swords only sheathed in scabbard, and these shall be kept in bags. Meaning, the swords used to be a normal thing for them to carry. So you're not coming as armed for fighting. Okay, and even when you come bringing the swords or the sheath, meaning you're not ready to be fighting. And then war activity shall be suspended for 10 years. So there's a treaty. Nobody will be fighting for 10 years, so there will be peace from both sides. And then if anyone from Quraysh goes over to Rasulullah without his guardian's permission, then Rasulullah has to return him back. But not the vice versa. If anybody leaves Islam and tries to come to Mecca, Rasulullah cannot stop him. See the difference? So here it seemed like a bit lopsided kind of a treaty that is favoring more to the Meccan than the Muslims. And you will see the consequences and Abu Bakr's role in that as well. So then number 5 was, whoever wishes to join Rasulullah or enter any treaty with him should have the liberty to do so. Meaning, anybody who's an ally of Rasulullah, any of the tribe, who are not even Muslim, doesn't matter, and whoever is a part of the or a tribe who allies with the Meccans, then they are the allies of the Mecca, and then they are also part of the treaty, meaning they will not fight with each other for 10 years either. Okay? So that was the treaty. Now, when this treaty happened, there are many long hadith. One of the hadith that talks about is about Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Many of the Sahaba were not pleased with the treaty. They were very energized, motivated that they are going for Umrah. Imagine, these are the Sahaba who left Mecca also, many of them, and they are not able to go back to the Haram to make the Umrah or anything. Okay, and the Haram in which they have already started praying in that direction as well. Right? Remember that Muslims were praying in the direction of the Aqsa, for Masjid al-Aqsa, for up to the first 17, 18 months after the migration, and after that the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah were revealed that commanded the Qibla has been changed from Masjid al-Aqsa to Masjid al-Haram. Yeah? So now they were praying in the direction, and they already had connection to Masjid al-Haram, to the Kaaba. And they wanted to go there, but they were prevented. Now, in this case, Umar, he went to Rasulullah and he was very sad about, displeased about the treaty that was made. And he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he said, "Aren't you the truly messenger of Allah?" Rasulullah said, "Yes." And he said, "Isn't our cause just and cause of enemy unjust?" He said, "Yes." Then Umar said, "Then why should we be humble in our deen?" He said, "I am Allah's messenger and I do not disobey him." Meaning, this treaty Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was making, that's by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not Rasulullah is just taking whatever the kuffar were saying at the time. Rather, that was a command of Allah Azza wa Jal to go by this treaty. And Rasulullah was following that. Then he said, Umar said, "Did you tell us that we would go to Kaaba and perform tawaf around it?" He said, "Yes." "But did I tell you that we would visit the Kaaba this year?" And of course, Umar said, "No." So Rasulullah said, "So you will visit it and perform tawaf around it." Umar further said, "I went," then he went to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And he started asking the very same questions to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And subhanAllah, what we see is Abu Bakr responded the same way, and Rasulullah responded to Umar at that time as well. And after that, throughout his life, Umar felt so bad about his attitude, the way he talked to Rasulullah that he continued to give charity, he continued to fast, continued to free the slaves and stuff, so he feel better that what he did at that time, the way he talked to Rasulullah. Because the way Abu Bakr responded, of course, that Abu Bakr was very aligned with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You find, remember we talked about Isra wal Mi'raj. There are people who left Islam because of Isra wal Mi'raj, and kuffar were ridiculing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba for that journey of Isra wal Mi'raj. And Abu Bakr's response was what, when the kuffar came to him, and he had not even talked to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yet. And his response was, "If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this, I believe." See, that's the firmness of the iman that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And that's what we should be looking for ourselves as well. Look, when we conclude what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, we have evidence-based information from the Quran and the Sunnah that what Allah Azza wa Jal wants from us, our attitude should always be, okay, how can I perform it? It should not be like this, how can I avoid it? And I'm not even getting into the issue of it's a fard of sunnah or a mubah action. No, if a command from Allah is there, our attitude should be this way. Now, how can I do it? How small it is doesn't matter, and how big it is. We have to look for it, how can I perform? That's the idea. And this is what we find very clearly in the life of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, that he was the first one to respond to the call of Allah and His Messenger. Okay. Now, Abu Bakr, after Sulh Hudaybiyah was broken by the kuffar of Mecca, and hence the Mecca, Rasulullah sent the army to Mecca, and Mecca was open. It was pretty much, there was not really much of a bloodshed happened. There were a couple of people were killed in the conquest of the Mecca. But anyways, the 8th year after Hijrah, Mecca was open, and now in the 8th year, Attab bin Usayd became the governor of the Mecca. There are different pronunciation of the name Attab, or Attab also, and Attab also. So anyway, so it's what I found was Attab, and he was the governor, and he was the one who was, because he's the governor of Mecca, he was the main person over there. But from Medina, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not. And this Hajj happened in the 9th year, of course, because Mecca was opened I believe in the Ramadan of the 8th year after Hijrah. Anyways, so 9th year, when Muslims were going for the Hajj, it was not performed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He did not go to the first Hajj after the conquest of the Mecca. The first Hajj was led by Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Okay, and Abu Bakr was leading for the Hajj, and while he was going towards that, there were one of the hadith actually talks about that the reason that Rasulullah said that this house, the Kaaba, is visited by the mushrikeen at that time, and they used to actually perform the tawaf of the Kaaba, some of them naked. Okay, not all of them. Some of them they used to do this way as well. And therefore, Rasulullah said, "I do not wish to perform Hajj until that no longer all this stuff is happening." And Abu Bakr was kind of sent to clean up, if you want to say. Because right after Abu Bakr left, Ali radiallahu anhu was followed Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Because Surah Al-Bara or Surah Tawbah was revealed that talks about all the legal issues, how to be taken care of, the Makkah to be taken care of, or the Kaaba must be taken care of, meaning cleanse them from all the mushrikeen, meaning that no more Hajj will be performed naked by the people. And when Ali came to, he caught up to Abu Bakr Siddiq on the way. So the first question Abu Bakr asked was, Amir am Ma'mur? Meaning that am I the Amir, or are you the Amir, the leader, or you are going to be Ma'mur, meaning the one who will be led? And Ali's response was, Bal Ma'mur, I am also the one who will be led, you are still the leader. So Abu Bakr continued to be leader. Now, the announcements that were made, some of the four important announcements were, none will enter paradise save the believers. No one would ever again be permitted to be naked while performing tawaf around the Kaaba. And any treaty that had been agreed upon with Rasulullah ﷺ would remain valid until its expiry date, but would not be extended after that. After that year, never again would mushrikeen be allowed to perform Hajj. Okay? So these are the few of the articles, few of the main things that were announced, and Ali radiallahu anhu was specifically sent to make this announcement. And he was going places to places and making announcement towards the Hajjaj at that time. Ali was the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the leader. And in that society, it is, if some important news to be delivered from the ruler, it is better to be one from the family member. And hence Ali radiallahu anhu was appointed for that specific task that he went and made the announcement. Okay, so that's all I want to cover. Inshallah, next week we will talk about the passing away of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the events that followed the passing away of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how Muslims dealt with it. Actually, I would like you guys to go at least read that section of Sirah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want you to, there's one aspect I want to highlight, which is when Rasulullah passed away, how long did it take for the burial of Rasulullah? And I can tell you, but to read it all. I want you to read so you have your own piece of information, your own evidences. He died Monday, he was buried Wednesday night. Okay? So there is something more important was going on at that time than even the burial was today. Okay? So start here. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. If there's any questions or comments, inshallah I will try to address them.